Hi everyone, it's about 30 hours until Song in the Desert releases. It will be released at 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday Eastern Daylight Time, because that's where I live, on YouTube, and on the other streaming platforms I think it might release at midnight, a little earlier, on Spotify and iTunes and everywhere else. But anyway, this evening I want to share some of my favorite verses in the Bible where God talks about and makes promises of what He does in the desert places, what He's going to do. And these are also promises that He's already fulfilled for many people. They're ongoing promises. They're not just one-time promises. First, I do want to mention that if you just go to Blue Letter Bible or Bible Gateway or any of those websites to search for the word desert in the Bible, you will find verses that talk about the desert in a very negative standpoint. And those are typically verses having to do with judgment of nations who have repeatedly, over and over and over again, refused to follow God, refused to worship Him. So there is a time when that can happen. But again, I want to say that for a person who wants God's presence, who's hungering for God's presence, they're not in the desert as punishment. Not at all. Those times in the Bible where God talked about people becoming desolate and nations becoming desolate, it was, again, after repeated stubborn refusal to turn and worship God. God is not a God that punishes us for struggling, or punishes us for this sin or that sin. There is consequences of sin, but He is like the prodigal son's father, always waiting for us to turn around and come back and repent. He's never ever saying, nope, you screwed up, you're gonna have to stay in the desert for the rest of your life. He always longs for and seeks those who seek Him. So if you are seeking Him, then these verses about the desert seasons are the ones that are for you, okay? So I just pulled up some of my favorites from Isaiah, and I want to share them with you. One of them is Isaiah 35 and verses 1 through 6. In this one, God says, "The wilderness and the desert will rejoice, and the desert will shout for joy and blossom like the crocus. It will bloom profusely and rejoice with joy and jubilation. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the exhausted and make the feeble strong. Say to those with an anxious heart, take courage, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance. The retribution of God will come, but He will save you. Then the eyes of those who are blind will be opened, and the ears of those who are deaf will be unstopped. And those who limp will leap like a deer, and the tongue of those who cannot speak will shout for joy. For waters will burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The scorched land will become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water." That's the promise for those who are part of Zion, the heavenly people, the heavenly nation of God, the spiritual nation of God here on earth. It's not talking about in heaven. It's talking about here on earth, the people that are of God's kingdom here on earth. This is what He does in our desert seasons. The next one, Isaiah 40:30, and this is a prophetic one. It says, it's a prophetic for John the Baptist. It's where God says, "The voice of one calling out in the wilderness, clear the way for the Lord in the wilderness, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." And that was the prophecy of what John the Baptist was going to do for Jesus. But that desert is symbolic. It's in the desert places that God makes a pathway and prepares the way for Him to come in his power and his glory, and that's true in our life also. Isaiah 41:19. Actually, I think there's a couple verses here. Yeah, Isaiah 41 verses 17 through 20 is what I'm going to read here. It says, "The poor and the needy are seeking water, but there is none, and their tongues are parched with thirst." So does this feel like maybe how some of you are feeling right now? God says, "I, the Lord, will answer them myself. As the God of Israel, I will not abandon them. I will open rivers on the bare heights and springs in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land fountains of water. I will put the cedar in the wilderness, the acacia, the myrtle, the olive tree. I will place the juniper in the desert, together with the elm tree and the cypress." So this is a whole bunch of plants growing that need water to grow, and they're all going to grow and get strong and healthy, because this is symbolic of just how fertile he's going to make the desert. And then verse 20 says, "So that," this is why he does it, "so that they may see and recognize and consider and gain insight that the hand of the Lord has done this, and the Holy One of Israel has created it." That's just another verse full of promise, and there's someone that I love very much, and I actually prayed those verses in that chapter over this person for many, many years after God gave it to me. And then the day came when I got to start seeing that blossom and grow, and I'm still believing for the rest of it. Isaiah 43:19. This is another of my absolute favorite verses. God says, "Behold, I am going to do something new." Just a minute, I want to do a couple verses here. Go to the chapter. Okay. God says, starting in 18, "Do not call to mind the former things or consider things of the past." In the New Testament, Paul said, "Forgetting what lies behind and pressing on for the prize." So God's saying the same thing here in the Old Testament and Isaiah. "Do not call to mind the former things or consider things of the past. Behold, I'm going to do something new. Now it will spring forth. Won't you be aware of it? I will even make a roadway in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The animals of the field will glorify me, the jackals and ostriches, because I have given waters in the wilderness and rivers in the desert to give drink to my chosen people. The people who I formed for myself will declare my praise." And that is so much that's what we're born to do, to declare his praise and display his praise, the glory of God. So I just want to encourage you, wherever you're at in your desert season, however you're feeling, these are all promises for you. These are all verses, words straight from the mouth of God that you can hold on to. You can go to God and say, "God, this is what you said you do in the desert, and I believe that you are going to do it in my life, because I am choosing you and I'm hungry for you and I want your presence." And even if you have to say, "I don't know how to find you, I feel lost, I feel like nothing's happening," remember, these are all feelings. The truth is what God says. So focus on those. Read these verses to yourself. Read them, speak them out loud to yourself, and keep your focus on God, because this is what he wants to do in every single one of us. Remember, in the New Testament, the Bible talks about how, or Jesus himself said, "Out of you will flow rivers of living water." And he talked about how he was the living water for the Samaritan woman. That living water, we have to learn to go deep and dig deep wells, to put it that way, in God, to draw from him and not draw from the world around us. That's what we're used to doing. That's what we started doing. That's what God's trying to wean us out away from. That's why he takes us out of the desert season, so that we can get away from the other things we're drawing from, and draw deep from him to find this water that he has for us in our in our wilderness and in our desert seasons, because only then will the living water truly flow from us when He leads us out into our promised land and the place and the destiny that He has for us. So I hope that encourages you and blesses you, and I cannot wait to share Song in the Desert with you Tuesday morning. God bless.